The sky above Eridani 7 turned black as the Dreeden Imperium's warships descended through the atmosphere. Their hulls, darker than the void between stars, absorbed all light that touched them. The planetary defense grid, once considered impenetrable, flickered and died as the invaders unleashed a concentrated energy pulse that overloaded every circuit and shield generator on the surface. "They're through the outer defenses," announced General Korvax, his 4 arms tensely manipulating the tactical display as his scaled skin paled with dread. "Estimate 15 minutes until they reach the capital." Governor Thalara stared at the projection, watching as one by one, the defense stations blinked out of existence. The Eridani system had stood as a proud border world of the Galactic Alliance for centuries. Now it would fall in a matter of hours. "They've swept through dozens of worlds without significant resistance," Thalara whispered, more to herself than to her staff. "We're just the next in line." Around the command center, the remaining military and civilian leaders of Eridani 7 watched in horrified silence as the Dreeden ships methodically destroyed every military installation on the planet. Their weapons, energy lances that could pierce any known armor, disruptor fields that unraveled matter at the molecular level, were unlike anything the Alliance had ever encountered. "Governor," urged her communications officer, a young Vesperi whose translucent wings vibrated with anxiety, "we must send the emergency signal now, while we still can." Thalara nodded grimly. "Prepare the quantum relay. Upload all tactical data we've gathered on their attack patterns and weaponry. The Alliance must know what they're facing." As technicians rushed to comply, Thalara moved to a secure terminal and began recording her final message to Alliance Command. "This is Governor Thalara of Eridani 7. Our defenses have failed. The Dreeden invasion force is larger than anticipated and equipped with technology far beyond our capabilities. We cannot hold. I repeat, we cannot hold. The civilian evacuation is only 30% complete. Millions will be trapped when they arrive. Please send immediate military assistance." She paused, swallowing hard before continuing. "If no help can reach us in time, then consider this our final contribution to the Alliance. All sensor data from our encounters with their ships has been attached to this transmission. Use it, learn from our defeat, and avenge us." The building shook as something massive impacted nearby. Dust rained from the ceiling. "Transmission complete," the communications officer announced. "Signal away on all emergency frequencies." Thalara nodded, then turned to address the room. "Initiate emergency protocol Omega. Destroy all sensitive data. Those with evacuation priorities, proceed to your designated shuttles." No one moved. General Korvax stepped forward. "We stand with you, Governor. To the end." A series of violent explosions rocked the building. The lights flickered, then stabilized. "Perimeter breached," someone called out. "They're inside the compound." On the main view screen, Thalara watched as the final transport ships attempted to flee the planet. One by one, they were caught in tractor beams or shot down by the invaders. The people of Eridani 7 would find no escape. As the walls began to crumble around them, Thalara closed her eyes and hoped that her final message would reach someone who could make a difference. The emergency quantum transmission from Eridani 7 rippled across space, bouncing through hidden relays and secret channels until it reached the Alliance Central Command on Helios Prime. The Grand Council chamber, with its soaring crystalline dome that captured and magnified the light of 3 suns, had never felt so cold. "That's the 5th border world to fall this cycle," said Archivist Zendara, his tentacled appendages nervously manipulating the holographic display to show the advancing Dreeden forces. "Their conquest is accelerating. At this rate, they'll reach the core worlds within 2 standard months." Around the circular table, representatives from 27 species shifted uncomfortably. Some whispered among themselves. Others sat in stunned silence. Supreme Commander Valtor, a towering Ursan whose battle-scarred fur and cybernetic eye spoke of countless conflicts, slammed his fist on the table. "We must mount a unified defense. Commit every available warship to halt their advance." We tried that at Proxima Centauri, countered Ambassador Estrella, her feathered crest flattening against her skull in distress. We lost 300 ships in less than an hour. Their technology simply outmatches ours. Then we must sue for peace, suggested Delegate Morven, his holographic form flickering as he spoke from the distant Pleiades cluster. Perhaps they can be reasoned with. There must be something they want that we can provide. Appeasement. Valtor growled. They've shown no interest in diplomacy. They don't take prisoners. They don't establish communications. They simply conquer and move on. The chamber erupted into multiple overlapping arguments. Some demanded immediate mobilization of all military assets. Others insisted on evacuation of threatened systems. A few even suggested surrendering outer territories to buy time for the core worlds. In the midst of the chaos, a small, reptilian figure rose from her seat at the far end of the table. Counselor Zix was among the oldest members of the Alliance leadership, representing the ancient Saurians who had been among the founding species of the galactic community. There is another option, she said, her voice barely audible above the din. The chamber gradually fell silent as heads turned toward her. One we have long forbidden ourselves from considering, she continued, eyes downcast as if ashamed of what she was about to suggest. A species that might possess the unconventional thinking required to face this threat. Supreme Commander Valtor's cybernetic eye whirred as if focused on Zix. You cannot possibly be suggesting. Humans, Zix said, the word hanging in the air like a forbidden incantation. The reaction was immediate and violent. Several delegates rose to their feet in protest. Others demanded Zix be removed from the chamber for even mentioning the species. They are quarantined for a reason, shouted Ambassador Estrella. Have you forgotten the Proxima Wars? The devastation they caused when they were allowed to develop unchecked? Of course not, Zix replied calmly. But neither have I forgotten that before the quarantine, they defeated enemies that the rest of us could not. Their history is written in blood. Yes, but also in impossible victories against overwhelming odds. Archivist Zendara's appendages twitched nervously. The quarantine protocols were established by unanimous consent after the Mars incident. To break them would violate our most sacred laws. And what good are our laws if we are all destroyed? Zix countered. The humans have been contained within their solar system for over a century. In that time, we've monitored them, studied them. Despite our restrictions on their interstellar capabilities, they've continued to advance Indiana. Creative ways. Supreme Commander Valtor growled deep in his throat. We restricted their development of faster-than-light technology and limited their military expansion beyond their home system for good reason. They're too aggressive, too unpredictable. Precisely the qualities that might save us now, Zix insisted. The Dreeden overwhelm us because they fight conventionally, just with superior technology. But humans? They've never followed conventions. They improvise. They take risks no sane species would consider. The council chamber grew quiet as the implications sank in. Are we truly so desperate, whispered Delegate Morven, that we would unleash a species we once feared enough to imprison within their own star system? Zix looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each council member in turn. Another transmission just arrived, said Archivist Zendara suddenly, his voice hollow. Rigel, 9 has fallen. Casualties estimated at 3 billion. In the heavy silence that followed, Zix spoke once more. The question is not whether we should release them, she said. The question is whether we can afford not to. Earth in the year 2187 was a world of contradictions. The gleaming megacities that dominated every continent boasted technological marvels that would have seemed like magic to previous generations. Gravity manipulation, molecular fabrication, neural interfaces that blended mind and machine. Yet beyond those cities, vast nature preserves and restored wilderness areas flourished, reclaiming territories once lost to urban sprawl and industrial pollution. After nearly destroying their planet in the 21st century, humanity had painstakingly rebuilt it into something that balanced technology and nature. But there was one technological frontier where humanity's reach had been forcibly curtailed: the stars. Following the Mars incident of 2084, when a rogue human military faction had used experimental weaponry that nearly destabilized the Martian orbit, the Galactic Alliance had stepped in. The terms they imposed were harsh but clear. Earth could maintain its existing colonies within the solar system, but interstellar travel would be strictly limited. Military vessels were prohibited from traveling beyond Pluto's orbit. Any starship caught attempting to breach these restrictions would be disabled and its crew detained. For a century, humanity had chafed under these restrictions. They built their cities higher, expanded deeper into their own solar system, and developed technologies that pushed the boundaries of physics, all while watching alien ships freely traverse the stars they were forbidden to explore. And in secret, they built the UES Aegis. Hidden within the asteroid belt, constructed in segments across dozens of concealed facilities, the Aegis represented everything the Alliance had forbidden. Its hull was composed of metamaterials that absorbed scanner waves rather than reflecting them. Its propulsion system utilized revolutionary principles that masked its energy signature. Its weapons systems, theoretically powerful enough to threaten even an Alliance capital ship, were disguised as mining equipment and scientific apparatus. On paper, the Aegis was a deep space research vessel. In reality, it was humanity's insurance policy, a warship unlike any ever built, designed to survive and fight in a universe that had contained humanity like an unruly child. Captain Aria de Silva stood on the observation deck of the UES Aegis, watching as maintenance drones swarmed around the ship's exterior, making final adjustments to the hull plating. At 43, De Silva carried herself with the confidence of someone who had spent her entire adult life in space. Her dark hair was cut in a practical military style, and a thin scar ran from her right temple to her jawline, a souvenir from an oxygen fire during her early days in the service. "Captain, you have visitors," announced the ship's AI. Alliance diplomatic envoy requesting immediate audience. "Priority Alpha." De Silva raised an eyebrow. The Alliance rarely sent representatives to Earth, and when they did, it was usually to issue reprimands or add new restrictions. "Have them escorted to Conference Room 1, she replied, "and notify Commander Ramirez." 20 minutes later, De Silva sat across from 3 Alliance representatives: a tall, furry Ursan with extensive cybernetic implants, a feathered avian being with 4 arms, and a small reptilian creature whose age was impossible to determine. "Captain De Silva," began the Ursan, "I am Supreme Commander Valtor of the Alliance Defense Force. These are Ambassador S.H. Rella and Counselor Zix. We come on a matter of utmost urgency." De Silva nodded, but remained silent, studying each visitor carefully. "The Alliance is facing an unprecedented threat," Valtor continued. "A hostile force known as the Dreeden Imperium has invaded our territory and overwhelmed our defenses. We've lost 17 worlds in the past 60 days. Billions dead or displaced." "That sounds serious," De Silva replied neutrally, "but I'm curious why you're telling me this. Alliance military matters have never been Earth's concern, by your mandate, not ours." The feathered ambassador, S.H. Rella, bristled visibly. "Your insolence is understandable," interrupted the elderly reptilian, Counselor Zix. "Captain, we are here because we stand on the precipice of annihilation. The Dreeden possess technology that neutralizes our defenses and weapons that cut through our strongest ships. Conventional tactics have failed us at every turn. And you think humans can help?" De Silva asked, unable to keep a hint of skepticism from her voice. "After a century of telling us we're too dangerous to join your galactic community? We think you might succeed precisely because of the qualities we once feared," said Zix. "Your adaptability, your unconventional thinking, your capacity for aggressive problem solving." De Silva leaned forward. "So you want soldiers? Advisors?" "We want this ship," said Valtor bluntly, gesturing around them. "Yes, we know about the Aegis. Did you really think you could hide such a project from our surveillance?" A tense silence filled the room as De Silva processed this revelation. The Aegis was supposed to be humanity's best-kept secret, their ace in the hole if relations with the Alliance ever deteriorated beyond repair. The Alliance High Command proposes a joint operation, continued Valtor. The Aegis, with its unique capabilities, would serve alongside our fleet to counter the Dreeden threat. Under Alliance command, of course, added Satrella. De Silva laughed, the sound sharp and without humor. Of course, you restrict us for a century, then expect us to hand over our most advanced ship and place it under your control the moment you need help. We are offering humanity a chance to rejoin the galactic community, Satrella countered, to prove that you can be trusted with the responsibilities that entails. What my colleagues are failing to articulate, Zix interjected, is that this is as much an opportunity for Earth as it is for the Alliance. Demonstrate your value in this crisis, and the quarantine restrictions could be reconsidered. De Silva stood, pacing the length of the conference room. I'll need to consult with Earth United Government. This decision isn't mine alone. Time is a luxury we don't have, said Valtor. Every day we delay, another world falls. Then I suggest you make yourselves comfortable, replied De Silva. Because one thing hasn't changed about humans in the last century, we don't appreciate being rushed into decisions that might get us killed. The negotiations lasted 3 days. 3 days of heated arguments, thinly veiled threats, and reluctant compromises. In the end, an agreement was reached. The UES Aegis would join the Alliance fleet in combating the Dreeden threat, but would remain under human command, specifically under Captain Arya De Silva. The ship would operate independently, coordinating with Alliance forces but not subject to their direct control. In return, the Alliance would begin the process of reviewing Earth's quarantine status, with the potential for full integration into the galactic community if the mission proved successful. As the Aegis prepared for departure, De Silva assembled her command crew in the ship's briefing room, a team that Alliance officials had described, with thinly veiled disapproval, as problematic after reviewing their service records. Commander Jack Ramirez, her executive officer, was a wiry man with a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow and a reputation for interpreting orders creatively. He'd been demoted twice for insubordination, but both incidents had resulted in saved lives when standard protocols would have failed. So were the cavalry riding to the rescue, Ramirez remarked, studying the holographic display of Dreeden fleet movements. Funny how fast we went from dangerous primitives to valued allies. They're desperate, De Silva replied. And desperate people, or aliens, will overlook a lot of history when extinction is the alternative. Chief Engineer Maya Wong entered next, her uniform bearing the customary grease stains that no amount of regulation could eliminate. Wong had been blacklisted from 3 research institutions for what they termed reckless innovation, modifications and experiments that pushed systems beyond their design parameters. On the Aegis, those same qualities had resulted in a propulsion system that defied conventional understanding of physics. Captain, the pulse drive modifications are complete, Wong reported. We're looking at a 20% increase in burst acceleration, though I wouldn't recommend using it for more than 90 seconds at a time. After that, things get interesting. Define interesting, De Silva asked. Theoretically, molecular destabilization of the drive housing, Wong replied with a shrug. But that's just a theory. Dr. Eleanor Reyes arrived last, her attention divided between the briefing and the data scrolling across her neural interface. As the ship's chief medical officer and xenobiologist, Reyes had been controversial even before joining the Aegis crew. Her research into human genetic adaptation for extreme environments had earned her censure from the Global Ethics Committee, despite its revolutionary implications for long-term space habitation. I've reviewed the physiological data on the Dreeden forces, Reyes said without preamble. If the Alliance scans are accurate, we're looking at multiple species fighting under one banner, but there's something odd about their neural patterns. Similar synchronization frequencies across disparate biologies. Meaning, De Silva prompted. Meaning they might not be independent actors, Reyes explained. Some form of control or influence seems to be at work. I need more data to be certain. De Silva nodded, then addressed the entire group. I won't sugarcoat this. We're heading into a conflict against an enemy that's already decimated forces far more advanced than anything humanity has previously encountered. The Alliance is watching us, waiting for us to fail or prove them right about our savage nature. She paused, looking each officer in the eye. But this is also our chance, perhaps our only chance, to break free from a century of isolation and prove that humanity deserves its place among the stars. I don't intend to waste it. A series of acknowledgments echoed around the table. Wong, I want those engines ready for extended FTL in 6 hours. Ramirez, coordinate with Alliance Tactical to identify our first deployment zone. Reyes, continue analyzing everything we have on Dream biology and technology. We launch at 0600. As our officers dispersed, De Silva remained in the briefing room, studying the tactical displays. The Alliance had lost every major engagement against the Dreeden forces. Their strategies were sound, but predictable. Exactly what you'd expect from a civilization that had enjoyed millennia of relative peace and technological superiority. But humanity had evolved in constant conflict against nature and against itself. Adaptation and innovation in the face of superior forces wasn't just a military doctrine. It was encoded in their very history. The Aegis would depart Earth with an officially sanctioned mission to assist the Alliance. Unofficially, it carried the hopes of an entire species that had spent too long caged within their own solar system. The real test came, sooner than expected. Just hours after the Aegis joined the Alliance Defense Network, a distress call arrived from Vega Prime, a prosperous mid-rim world with a population of over 12 billion. Dreeden scout ships had been detected entering the system. The Alliance dispatched a response fleet of 30 vessels, the Aegis assigned to the rear guard, well away from any potential engagement. A precautionary measure, according to the Alliance commander. From her position on the Aegis bridge, Captain De Silva watched the tactical display with growing frustration as the Alliance ships formed a textbook defensive perimeter around Vega Prime. Their formation was perfect, their positioning flawless, and utterly predictable. They're making the same mistake again, she muttered. Commander Ramirez nodded. Presenting a united front, mass defensive fire. It's what they've tried at every previous engagement. And lost every time, De Silva added. The Dreeden will hit them from an unexpected vector, split their formation, then pick them off in isolated groups. Sure enough, as the Alliance fleet established its defensive sphere, sensors detected a surge of energy from the system's outer reaches. A massive gravitational distortion tore open space itself, and through this rupture came not the expected Dreeden scout ships, but a full battle group. 15 capital ships accompanied by dozens of smaller vessels. That's not a scouting party, Ramirez observed grimly. That's an invasion force. The Alliance fleet commander's voice crackled over the comm system. All vessels maintain formation. Concentrate fire on the lead capital ships when they enter range. De Silva exchanged looks with her bridge crew. The Alliance ships were arranging themselves in a static defensive wall, exactly the tactic that had failed repeatedly against the Dreeden. Tactical. Analyze their approach vector and predict likely flanking maneuvers, De Silva ordered. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chun, the Aegis's tactical officer, ran the calculations. Based on previous engagement data, 87% probability they'll split into 3 attack groups. Main force engaging head-on, while secondary elements loop around to attack from above and below the ecliptic plane. De Silva nodded, just as they did at Proxima and Eridani. She made her decision. Helm, take us out of formation. Full impulse toward coordinates 227 Mark 46. Captain, Ramirez cautioned, we've been ordered to maintain position in the rear guard. Then log my decision as a navigational error, if anyone asks, De Silva replied. But I'm not going to sit back and watch another massacre. The Aegis broke away from its assigned position, accelerating toward a seemingly empty region of space above the plane of engagement. Alliance Command immediately demanded an explanation, but De Silva ordered communications to report technical difficulties with their comm system. Time to contact with predicted Dreeden flanking force? De Silva asked. 3 minutes, assuming they follow expected tactics, Chen replied. Weapons status. Main pulse cannons charged and ready. Kinetic drivers loaded. Point defense grid active. De Silva nodded. Take us dark. Passive sensors only. Minimal energy signature. The Aegis's external lights dimmed as the ship reduced its power emissions to near background levels. A stealth capability that the Alliance had specifically prohibited in their restrictions on human military technology, but which had been incorporated into the Aegis nevertheless. For 2 long minutes, the bridge crew waited in tense silence as the main Dreeden force engaged the Alliance fleet exactly as predicted. The Alliance's unified defensive formation was holding, for now, but sensors detected the energy signatures of additional Dreeden vessels moving precisely toward the intercept point the Aegis now occupied. 5 Dreeden destroyers on approach, Chen reported quietly. They haven't detected us yet. Hold position, De Silva ordered. Weapons, prepare to fire on my mark, full spread, targeting their propulsion and weapon systems. The enemy ships moved closer, their black hulls barely visible against the backdrop of space even with enhanced imaging. They were clearly positioning to strike the Alliance fleet from behind, while its attention was focused on the frontal assault. Range 1,000 kilometers, Chen announced. 800. 600. Fire, De Silva commanded. The Aegis erupted from its hiding place, all weapons blazing simultaneously. The first barrage caught the Dreeden ships completely by surprise, tearing through the lead vessel's shields and rupturing its hull. The remaining 4 immediately broke formation, their superior maneuverability allowing them to evade the worst of the Aegis's follow-up strikes. Evasive pattern Delta, De Silva ordered as the Dreeden ships returned fire, their energy weapons lashing out with deadly precision. The Aegis rolled and pitched, its human-designed inertial dampeners allowing for more aggressive maneuvers than most Alliance vessels could manage. 2 Dreeden energy beams grazed the hull, leaving scorched trails across the armor but failing to penetrate. Return fire, all batteries, De Silva commanded. Target their weapon emplacements. The battle that followed was brief but intense. The Aegis darted between the Dreeden ships, firing from unexpected angles, never staying in one place long enough to present an easy target. 2 more enemy vessels were crippled before the remaining pair broke off, accelerating back toward their main fleet. Should we pursue? Ramirez asked. De Silva shook her head. No, we've disrupted their flanking maneuver. Now we need to warn the Alliance about the second group that's surely approaching from below. Sure enough, sensors detected another Dreeden force moving into position beneath the Alliance fleet. This time, however, the Alliance commanders were ready, having witnessed the Aegis's successful interception of the first flanking attempt. The coordinated defense that followed marked the first Alliance victory, however small, against the Dreeden forces. 3 enemy capital ships were destroyed, and the remainder withdrew from the Vega system. In the aftermath, the Aegis received mixed reactions from the Alliance fleet. Official communications expressed disapproval of the ship's failure to maintain its assigned position. Unofficially, several Alliance captains transmitted messages of gratitude and admiration for the Aegis's decisive action. Most significant of all was the reaction from the Dreeden forces themselves. Analysis of their retreat pattern indicated that they had specifically altered course to avoid the region of space where the Aegis was positioned, the first indication that the invaders considered the human vessel a threat worth avoiding. As the Alliance fleet regrouped, Captain De Silva received a secure transmission from Counselor Zix back at Alliance headquarters. Captain, the elderly reptilian said, her image flickering slightly over the quantum connection, your unconventional tactics have not gone unnoticed. I assume I'll be receiving a formal reprimand, De Silva replied. From some quarters, perhaps, Zix acknowledged. But you've accomplished something far more valuable than following orders. You've demonstrated that the Dreeden can be surprised, and that they can be defeated. De Silva nodded. They're not invincible. Their technology is superior, but their tactics are rigid. They don't adapt well to unexpected threats. Precisely the insight we've been lacking, said Zix. The Alliance War Council has re-evaluated your ship's role in this conflict. The Aegis is being reassigned from the reserve to active combat operations. De Silva raised an eyebrow. That's a significant change of heart. Necessity often changes minds more effectively than reason. Zix replied with what might have been a smile. But be warned, you've also attracted the attention of the Dreeden themselves. They will be watching for you now. Good, said De Silva. Let them worry about what we'll do next for a change. After the battle at Vega Prime, the Aegis was deployed to increasingly critical engagements. While the ship couldn't be everywhere at once, its presence often made the difference between victory and defeat. The human vessel's unpredictable tactics and ability to strike from unexpected vectors forced the Dreeden to divide their attention and resources. But the tide of war continued to favor the invaders. For every world the Alliance successfully defended, 2 more fell to the relentless Dreeden advance. The enemy seemed to have limitless ships and resources, while Alliance forces grew more stretched with each passing week. 3 months into the conflict, the Aegis participated in a desperate defense of the Arcturus system, a major Alliance manufacturing hub. The battle was the most intense yet, with over 200 Alliance vessels facing a Dreeden armada nearly twice that size. In the chaos of combat, the Aegis executed a daring attack run against what appeared to be a Dreeden command vessel, penetrating its defensive screen long enough to deploy a boarding team led by Commander Ramirez. Their mission: to extract intact data cores that might provide insight into Dreeden tactics and technology. The extraction team suffered heavy casualties, but managed to return with a heavily shielded data module from the Dreeden ship's central processing chamber. The Aegis itself took significant damage during the escape, with multiple hull breaches and several key systems operating at reduced capacity. As the ship limped back to an Alliance repair facility, Dr. Reyes worked tirelessly to decode and analyze the recovered data. After 48 hours without sleep, she requested an urgent meeting with Captain De Silva. "What am I looking at?" De Silva asked, studying the complex neural patterns displayed on Reyes's laboratory screen. "Something that changes everything we thought we knew about the Dreeden," Reyes replied, her voice tense with excitement and fatigue. "These aren't natural thought patterns. They're induced, artificially generated and synchronized across multiple subjects." "Mind control?" De Silva asked. "Not exactly. More like overriding natural neural functions with an external directive. The beings we've been fighting, the foot soldiers, the ship crews, even their commanders, they're all being controlled by something else." "The overseers," De Silva murmured. Reyes nodded. "That's what they're called in the data. A separate species that somehow gained control over the original Dreeden civilization, and have been using them to conquer and assimilate other species for centuries. For what purpose?" "That's the truly disturbing part," Reyes said, bringing up another display showing energy transfer patterns. "They're not just conquering for territory or resources. They're harvesting something from the conquered worlds, from the beings themselves. The data refers to it as essence or vital energy." De Silva frowned. "You're saying they're, what, eating people's souls?" "I wouldn't use that terminology," Reyes replied carefully, "but they're extracting some form of energy that exists within all sentient life. The overseers apparently need it to maintain their existence." De Silva stared at the data, the implications sinking in. "So we're not fighting an empire. We're fighting parasites." "Parasites with a massive enslaved army," Reyes confirmed. "But there's something else, a vulnerability. The control system relies on specific transmission frequencies emanating from what the data calls nexus points. Major control hubs that coordinate the neural overrides across vast distances. Can we disrupt these transmissions?" "Theoretically, yes. But we need to get close to a nexus point, and according to this data, they're incredibly well protected, located in regions of space the Dreeden control completely." De Silva straightened. "We need to take this to Alliance Command immediately. If we can locate one of these nexus points." "I've already identified the closest one," Reyes interrupted, bringing up a stellar map. "It's here, in the Cygnus X-1 region. A massive space station built around a collapsed star. The gravitational distortion provides natural shielding and power generation capabilities. That's deep in Dreden-controlled space, De Silva noted. Getting there would be nearly impossible for a conventional fleet. But perhaps not for one ship, Reyes suggested, especially a ship designed to evade detection. De Silva considered the possibilities. I'll present this to the Alliance War Council, but I already know what most of them will say. It's too risky, too speculative. They'll want to continue with conventional warfare, even though we're losing. And what will you say, Captain? De Silva's expression hardened. That sometimes the riskiest course of action is the only one with any chance of success. The Alliance War Council's reaction to the Aegis's discovery was predictably divided. The more conservative members, led by Ambassador Esatrella, argued vehemently against what they termed a suicidal mission based on unverified intelligence. Others, including Supreme Commander Valtor, reluctantly acknowledged that conventional tactics had failed to slow the Dreden advance. The debate raged for hours, with various factions proposing alternative approaches, from full-scale retreat to the core worlds to attempting diplomatic contact with the overseers themselves. In the end, it was Counselor Zix who broke the deadlock. "We have forgotten an essential truth," the elderly reptilian said, her voice cutting through the arguments. "In times of existential crisis, wisdom often lies in embracing the unconventional. The humans have provided us not only with crucial intelligence, but with a bold strategy that targets our enemy's true weakness. I move that we authorize Captain De Silva's mission with all necessary support." After another hour of debate, the Council approved a compromise. The Aegis would undertake the mission to the Cygnus Nexus Point, accompanied by a small task force of the Alliance's most advanced stealth vessels. The main Alliance fleet would simultaneously launch diversionary attacks along the front lines to draw Dreden attention away from the Cygnus region. As the Aegis underwent emergency repairs, an unexpected ally arrived. A transport ship docked with the Alliance station carrying refugees from one of the fallen worlds, including a former slave from within Dreden territory. Kexon was a slender, gray-skinned being with 4 arms and large, compound eyes that reflected light in iridescent patterns. His species, the Nharvoden, had been among the first conquered by the Dredens centuries ago, and generations had lived under their control. "You're the first of your kind to escape?" De Silva asked as she met with the refugee in the Aegis's conference room. "The first to reach Alliance territory, perhaps," Kexon replied in a melodious voice that seemed at odds with his haggard appearance. "Others have tried. Few succeed. The overseers do not relinquish what they consider theirs." "Tell me about these overseers," De Silva prompted. "What are they?" Kexon's compound eyes flickered with what might have been fear. "They were once physical beings like us, it is said, but they found a way to transcend their biological limitations by consuming the essence of other sentient creatures. Now they exist in a state between matter and energy, requiring constant feeding to maintain their existence. And they control the Dreden completely. The Dreden were their first conquest, a technologically advanced but peaceful species that had no defense against the Overseer's psychic infiltration. Now they serve as the perfect vessels and enforcers." Kexon's 4 hands made a complex gesture that conveyed deep sorrow. "The conquest pattern is always the same. First comes the neural subjugation of leadership and military. Then the systematic harvesting begins, not of all life, but of those with the strongest mental energies. The rest are left as workers, soldiers, and breeding stock. And these nexus points, they coordinate the control signals?" De Silva asked. "Yes. Each one governs a sector of their territory. Destroy a nexus, and all control beings within its range would be freed, at least temporarily." Kexon leaned forward. "But the nexus at Cygnus is their oldest and most heavily defended. No attack has ever penetrated its outer defenses, let alone reach the central control hub. We don't plan to fight our way in," De Silva replied. "We plan to slip through undetected." Kexon's eyes flickered with an emotion De Silva couldn't interpret. "Then you will need someone who knows the internal layout and security protocols. Someone who has been inside." "You've been to this nexus?" De Silva asked, surprised. "I was born there," Kexon said simply. My people are used as technical maintenance due to our dexterity. I serve in the central hub for 20 cycles before escaping during a rare system failure. De Silva studied the alien carefully. Why would you risk returning to a place you fought so hard to escape from? Because I left others behind, Kexon replied, his voice hardening. Family, friends, billions of my kind still serve the overseers against their will. If there is even a small chance to free them, I must take it. After thorough security screening and consultation with Alliance intelligence, Kexon was added to the mission team. His intimate knowledge of the Nexus station's layout and operations proved invaluable during the planning phase, revealing vulnerabilities that wouldn't have been apparent from the recovered data alone. The plan that emerged was audacious even by human standards. The Aegis, along with 3 Alliance stealth ships, would use the gravitational distortion around Cygnus X, one to mask their approach. Once within range, they would deploy a series of modified quantum disruptors, devices designed to temporarily interfere with the Overseer's control frequencies. This disruption would create a momentary gap in the station's defenses, allowing a small strike team to board the Nexus. Once inside, they would plant a specialized virus within the central processing core, a virus developed by Dr. Reyes based on the neural patterns extracted from the capture data module. If successful, the virus would not only free the beings under direct control within the Cygnus sector, but would propagate through the Overseer's communication network to other Nexus points, potentially causing a cascade failure throughout their entire empire. The risks were enormous. Even with Kexon's inside knowledge, the strike team would be venturing into the heart of enemy territory with only a narrow window of opportunity. If captured, they faced a fate worse than death, neural subjugation, and conversion into Dreeden soldiers themselves. As the mission launch approached, Captain De Silva gathered her team for a final briefing. The strike force would consist of Commander Ramirez, Dr. Reyes, Chief Engineer Wong, Kexon, and 2 Alliance Special Operations officers who had volunteered for the mission. I won't pretend this isn't the most dangerous assignment any of us has ever faced, De Silva told them. The odds of all of us returning are not favorable. If anyone wishes to withdraw, now is the time. No judgment, no questions asked. No one moved. Then let's go over the final sequence one more time, De Silva continued. Our window is exactly 27 minutes from the moment the quantum disruptors activate, not a second longer. As the briefing concluded, Commander Ramirez lingered behind. Something on your mind, Jack? De Silva asked. Just thinking about the stakes, Ramirez replied. 100 years of isolation. And here we are, humanity's future hanging on one mission. Not just humanity's future, De Silva corrected him. Everyone's future. If we fail, the Dreeden keep expanding, keep consuming. Eventually, there won't be anyone left. Ramirez nodded. You know, when I joined the service, I never imagined I'd be leading a suicide mission into the heart of an alien mind control station. Is that what you think this is? A suicide mission? Ramirez gave a half smile. No, I think it's a long shot with terrible odds. But I also think if anyone can pull it off, it's this crew. He hesitated. Just, if things go sideways in there, don't wait for us. Get the Aegis out safely. Earth needs to know what they're facing. De Silva clasped his shoulder briefly. We all come back, or none of US does. That's how this works. Captain, that's an order, Commander. As Ramirez left, De Silva turned to the viewport, watching as the last preparations were completed on the Aegis's hull. In 12 hours, they would depart for Cygnus X-1. In 3 days, they would either strike a decisive blow against the Dreeden Empire or join the billions already lost to its inexorable advance. The Alliance diversionary attacks began right on schedule, drawing Dreeden forces away from the Cygnus sector. Reports indicated heavy fighting across multiple systems as Alliance fleets engaged the enemy with unprecedented coordination and aggression, tactics inspired by the Aegis's earlier successes. Meanwhile, the Aegis and its small escort of stealth vessels slipped through the gaps in the Dreeden defense network, using the massive radiation burst from the collapsed star at Cygnus X-1 to mask their approach. Chief Engineer Wong had modified the ship's shields to absorb and redirect the deadly radiation, but the protection wouldn't last indefinitely. Gravitational distortion increasing, reported Lieutenant Commander Chun from the tactical station. We're entering the outer security perimeter of the Nexus station. On the main view screen, the Nexus gradually came into view, a massive structure orbiting the collapsed star, shaped like a series of interconnected rings surrounding a central sphere. The entire station pulsed with eerie blue-green energy that seemed to flow through transparent conduits like blood through veins. Fascinating design, murmured Kexon from his position beside Dr. Reyes. The outer rings harvest energy directly from the star's gravitational field to power the neural control network. The inner sphere is where the overseers themselves reside, or whatever passes for residents in their current state. Life signs, De Silva asked. Difficult to distinguish with all the energy interference, Chen replied. But I'm reading thousands of biological signatures throughout the station, likely maintenance workers and security forces. Any sign we've been detected? Negative. Stealth systems functioning within parameters. But that will change the moment we launch the disruptors. De Silva nodded. All ships maintain position. Prepare quantum disruptors for synchronized deployment on my mark. She turned to Ramirez. Strike team status? Ready in the launch bay, Captain, he confirmed. Insertion vessel prepped and loaded with the virus package. De Silva took a deep breath. Begin final countdown. Deploy disruptors in 3, 2, 1. Mark. From each of the 4 ships, small projectiles launched simultaneously, accelerating toward predetermined coordinates around the Nexus station. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, in perfect synchronization, the disruptors activated, releasing pulses of quantum energy specifically calibrated to interfere with the Overseer's control frequencies. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Sections of the Nexus station suddenly went dark as power fluctuated wildly. Defense systems activated randomly, firing at phantom targets. Communication arrays pivoted erratically, searching for signals that were being scrambled by the disruptors. Disruption effective, Chen reported, detecting widespread system failures throughout the station. Their sensor grid is down. Defense platforms are in disarray. Launch the strike team, De Silva ordered, and may whatever gods you believe in watch over you. The insertion vessel, little more than a stealth-equipped shuttle modified for maximum speed and minimal detectability, detached from Aegis's ventral bay and accelerated toward the Nexus station. Piloted by Commander Ramirez, it navigated through the chaos of malfunctioning defense systems, heading for a maintenance airlock identified by Kexon as the least monitored entry point. Back on the Aegis, De Silva watched the insertion vessel's progress with growing tension. Time remaining on disruptor effect? 22 minutes, 40 seconds, Chen replied. But effectiveness is already decreasing as their systems adapt. They're faster than we anticipated, De Silva muttered. Inform the strike team. Their window is shrinking. Inside the insertion vessel, Ramirez received the updated timeline. Understood, Aegis. We'll double time it. He turned to his team. Change of plans. We split into 2 groups. Wong, Reyes, and I will proceed to the central processor with the virus. Kexon and the Alliance officers will create a diversion in the secondary control room. That wasn't the plan, Reyes objected. We need to stay together for maximum. Plans change when circumstances change. Ramirez cut her off. If we all go together, we'll never make it in time. 2 targets will confuse their response efforts. No one argued further as the insertion vessel docked with the maintenance airlock. Kexon quickly bypassed the security protocols, his 4 arms working with remarkable efficiency, and the team entered the Nexus station. The interior was unlike anything the humans had encountered before. Corridors that seemed to shift and pulse with the same blue-green energy they'd observed externally. Surfaces that weren't quite solid, yielding slightly to touch before firming again. And throughout a low, steady hum that resonated not just in their ears but inside their skulls. The Overseer's presence, Kexon explained in a whisper. Their consciousness permeates the entire structure. Stay focused on your thoughts. They can sense strong emotions and clear intentions. They encountered surprisingly few guards as they moved deeper into the station, a testament to the effectiveness of the quantum disruptors. Those they did encounter moved erratically, as if confused or only partially under control. The team avoided confrontation where possible, using stun weapons when necessary. At a major junction, the team split as planned. Kexon led the Alliance officers toward the secondary control room, while Ramirez, Wong, and Reyes continued toward the central processor. Remember, Kexon said before departing, you have 18 minutes before the disruptors fail completely. After that, the overseers will regain full control, and escape will become impossible. Ramirez nodded. 18 minutes to save the galaxy. No pressure. As Kexon's group disappeared down a side corridor, Ramirez led his team deeper into the Nexus. The architecture became increasingly bizarre as they approached the central chambers, spaces that defied conventional geometry, passages that seemed longer from the inside than their external dimensions would allow. It's like they've warped space itself, Wong murmured, running her hand along a wall that rippled at her touch. Focus, Ramirez reminded her. We need to find the central processor. 2 levels down, Reyes said, consulting the schematics Kexon had provided. There should be a vertical access shaft just ahead. They found the shaft, a tube of swirling energy rather than a physical structure, and descended into the heart of the Nexus station. The hum in their heads grew stronger, forming patterns that almost resembled words. They're becoming aware of us, Reyes warned, her voice tight. The disruptor effect is weakening faster than expected. The central processor chamber was a vast spherical space dominated by a pulsating crystalline structure suspended in midair. Energy flows from throughout the station converged here, feeding into the crystal before being redistributed outward again. That's it, Reyes said, removing the virus package from her secure case. I need to interface directly with the crystal matrix. Cover me. As Reyes approached the crystal, Wong set up defensive positions near the chamber's 3 entrances, deploying small devices that would temporarily seal the doors if activated. Ramirez kept watch, his attention divided between Reyes's progress and the monitoring devices showing Kexon's team creating havoc in the secondary control room. The distraction appeared to be working. Internal security forces were converging on that location, leaving the central processor relatively undefended. How much longer? Ramirez asked as Reyes worked to interface her equipment with the alien technology. Can't rush this, she replied tersely. One wrong connection and the virus could backfire, or worse, alert the overseers to exactly what we're doing. Minutes ticked by, precious time they couldn't afford to lose. Finally, Reyes established a connection. The virus package began uploading into the crystal matrix, causing it to flicker and change color, shifting from blue-green to an angry red. It's working, Reyes announced. The virus is... She never finished the sentence. A blast of energy struck her from behind, sending her sprawling across the chamber floor. Ramirez spun to see several Dreeden soldiers entering through an entrance they hadn't detected, a hidden access point not shown on Kexon schematics. Wong, seal the chamber, Ramirez shouted, returning fire as he dragged Reyes behind cover. Wong activated the door seals, but it was too late. More Dreeden forces were already inside, their weapons trained on the human intruders. And behind them came something else, a shimmering, translucent figure that seemed to flicker in and out of physical reality. An overseer, Wong whispered in horror. The entity had no distinct features, just a vaguely humanoid shape composed of swirling energy. When it spoke, the words formed directly in their minds, bypassing their ears entirely. Humans, we have been curious about your species. Few have ever resisted us so effectively. Ramirez positioned himself between the overseer and his injured companions. If you're so curious, why don't you try understanding us instead of conquering us? Understanding is consumption, the entity replied. We know a species only when we absorb its essence. Yours will be particularly satisfying. The overseer drifted closer, tendrils of energy reaching toward Ramirez. He felt his thoughts becoming sluggish, his will beginning to bend under the entity's influence. The virus, Reyes gasped from behind him, her voice weak but determined. It's still uploading. We just need more time. Ramirez fought against the mental intrusion, drawing on every resistance technique they developed during preparation for the mission. Wong, he managed to say, the emergency protocol. Do it. Wong's eyes widened in understanding. She reached for a device on her belt, a last resort weapon they'd hoped not to use. A quantum resonance bomb designed to disrupt the Overseer's energy patterns, but with a blast radius that would likely kill everyone in the chamber. No, the Overseer's voice thundered in their minds as it recognized the threat. The Dreeden soldiers surged forward. In that moment of distraction, Ramirez made his decision. He grabbed the bomb from Wong's belt, shoved her roughly toward Reyes, and activated his emergency transponder, a signal to the Aegis that extraction was needed immediately. Get her out of here, he ordered Wong. Complete the mission. Before Wong could protest, Ramirez charged directly at the Overseer, the quantum bomb clutched in his hand. The Dreeden soldiers fired, their energy weapons scorching through his suit and into flesh. He stumbled, but kept moving forward through sheer force of will. This is how humans resist, he gasped as he reached the Overseer, activating the bomb. We don't surrender, we sacrifice. The explosion ripped through the central chamber, a concentrated burst of quantum energy specifically calibrated to disrupt the Overseer's form. The entity shrieked, not in their ears but in their minds, as its energy pattern began to disintegrate. The blast threw Wong and Reyes against the far wall, but spared them the worst of its effects. As emergency extraction protocols engaged, the Aegis locking onto their transponders despite the interference, Wong dragged the semi-conscious Reyes toward the extraction point. Her last glimpse of Commander Ramirez was of him standing in the center of the quantum maelstrom, still facing the dissolving Overseer as both were consumed by the collapsing energy field. Then the extraction beam engaged, and they were gone, pulled back to the waiting Aegis as the Nexus station began to tear itself apart around them. On the Aegis bridge, Captain De Silva watched in horror as the central sphere of the Nexus station imploded, the quantum disruption spreading outward through the connected rings. Their sensors detected massive energy fluctuations throughout the structure. Strike team status? She demanded. 2 transponders detected, Chen reported. Extraction in progress. And the third? De Silva asked, already knowing the answer. Chen's voice was solemn. Commander Ramirez's transponder went offline just before the implosion. The extraction completed, depositing Wong and the injured Reyes directly into the Aegis's medical bay. De Silva wanted desperately to go to them, to learn exactly what had happened, but there was no time. The Nexus station was collapsing completely now, releasing waves of destructive energy in all directions. All ships, emergency departure, De Silva ordered. Maximum acceleration away from the blast radius. As the Aegis and its surviving escort vessels fled the Cygnus system, sensors detected a phenomenon spreading outward from the destroyed Nexus, a wave of neural disruption that severed the Overseer's control over their subject populations. Throughout the sector, Dreeden ships suddenly stopped fighting, many powering down completely as their crews were freed from mental bondage. The virus had worked, better than they'd dared hope. Not only had it disrupted the Cygnus Nexus, but it had propagated through the Overseer's network to other control points, creating a cascading failure throughout their empire. But the victory had come at a terrible cost. Commander Ramirez was gone, along with Kexon and the Alliance officers who had created the diversion that allowed the virus to be deployed. Hours later, as the Aegis rejoined the main Alliance fleet, De Silva finally made her way to the medical bay. Dr. Reyes was conscious but heavily sedated, her injury severe but not life-threatening. Chief Engineer Wong sat beside her bed, her face drawn with exhaustion and grief. He knew, didn't he? De Silva asked quietly. Ramirez. He suspected from the beginning that someone would have to stay behind. Wong nodded. He made me promise not to tell you. Said you'd never approve a plan where someone had to sacrifice themselves. He was right, De Silva admitted. I wouldn't have. She paused, looking at the medical readouts above Reyes's bed. Will she recover? Doctor says yes, physically. The rest. Wong trailed off. De Silva understood. Some wounds went beyond the physical. What about the virus? Did it deploy successfully? Better than we hoped, Wong confirmed. Reyes managed to complete the upload before she was hit. The virus propagated through their entire network. Reports are coming in from across Dreden space. Their ships are standing down, their ground forces are laying down weapons. The Overseer's control has been broken. And the Overseers themselves? Some were destroyed in the Nexus explosions. Others, Wong shrugged. They exist partially outside normal space-time. They may have fled to somewhere beyond our reach. Or they may be regrouping. So it might not be over, De Silva concluded. No, Wong agreed. But we've given the galaxy a fighting chance. And proved that humans aren't just the dangerous primitives the Alliance thought we were. In the weeks that followed, the full impact of the Cygnus mission became clear. Throughout Dreden-controlled space, billions of beings were freed from mental subjugation. The vast empire that had threatened to consume the galaxy fractured into thousands of liberated worlds, many now seeking alliance with the powers that had freed them. The Aegis returned to Earth as heroes, not just to humanity, but to the entire galactic community. The Alliance Council convened a special session to formally recognize Earth's contribution to the victory and to officially end the quarantine that had isolated humanity for a century. Captain Arya De Silva stood before the assembled representatives of hundreds of species, the weight of both triumph and loss heavy on her shoulders. The crew of the UES Aegis did what we were designed to do, she told them, her voice steady despite her emotions. We defended not just our own world, but all worlds. We faced an enemy that threatened not just our bodies, but our minds and our very essence as sentient beings. She paused, looking across the vast chamber. But let me be clear, we did not succeed because humans are inherently more warlike or aggressive than other species. We succeeded because we were outsiders, because our isolation gave us a different perspective, forced us to develop unconventional solutions. The lesson here isn't that humanity deserved to join your community because we helped save it. The lesson is that diversity of thought and approach makes us all stronger. There was a moment of silence. Then Counselor Zix rose from her seat. Captain De Silva speaks wisdom that we would do well to remember. For too long, the Alliance has feared difference rather than embracing it. That ends today. The formal ceremony that followed established Earth as a full member of the Galactic Alliance, with all the rights and responsibilities that entailed. Human ships would now be free to travel the stars alongside vessels from 1,000 other worlds. Human representatives would have a voice in determining the future of galactic civilization. As the ceremony concluded, Supreme Commander Valtor approached De Silva privately. There's something you should know, the Urson said quietly. Our long-range sensors have detected unusual energy patterns in the Andromeda Galaxy, patterns similar to those associated with Overseer activity. De Silva felt a chill run down her spine. You think they fled there? Or perhaps they've had a presence there all along, Valtor replied. Either way, the threat may not be eliminated, merely postponed. Then we'll face it together when the time comes, De Silva said firmly. As allies. Valtor nodded, extending his massive paw in the human gesture of a handshake that he had learned. As allies. The Aegis remained in service, its hull bearing the scars of the Cygnus battle as badges of honor. With a new executive officer and memorial plaques for those lost in the mission, the ship continued to serve as a symbol of humanity's emergence onto the galactic stage. Captain Arya De Silva often found herself on the observation deck during quiet moments, looking out at the stars that were now open to human exploration in a way they hadn't been for generations. Sometimes, she imagined Commander Ramirez was there beside her, his sardonic smile as he noted how they'd gone from quarantine troublemakers to respected allies in the span of a single mission. They conquered worlds with ease, she murmured to herself one evening, until a human warship blocked their path. But she knew the truth was more complex than that simple narrative. It wasn't just human ingenuity or the Aegis's advanced technology that had turned the tide. It was the combination of Alliance experience, human adaptability, and the courage of individuals from many species willing to sacrifice for something larger than themselves. As the Aegis prepared for its next mission, this time as part of a joint Alliance exploration initiative, Da Silva thought about the message they'd send to the beings of the Andromeda Galaxy, should they ever make contact. We are many species united as one community. We value our differences as much as our commonalities, and we will defend not just our bodies and our worlds, but our right to determine our own destinies. Those who seek to conquer us will find not easy prey, but a unified force of free beings who know the value of what they protect. They had conquered worlds with ease, indeed, until they encountered not just humans, but a galaxy finally ready to stand united against the darkness.